How are you doing?
Good. You guys?
Bad, not bad.
You doing any racing these days?
Putting a fire in my race car. I spend an hour and a half. I give myself an hour and a half every day when I get home on the car. It's got to be done in the next.
Cindy's going to begin to let people into the meeting. So if we stop chattering, then they won't hear what we're chattering about. So let's stop chattering. Oh,
Last time. Jeff coming?
He's running
they're in the world.
few minutes, but he will be there.
That's not true. That's not.
That's not.
So gave me lots of big snacks. And my clean inside to the food. Love it. It's just.
So, 20 years ago, and next thing, Mexico, I would.
My Mexico is on Highway 31.
Yeah, I just,
You're in the wrong travel.
yeah,
We should be in the J Bear travel.
yeah,
And then the regional campuses.
exactly.
Living in the.
Well, it's 3:00, so let's begin. We'll call the meeting to order, and Mr. Whitlatch, if you'll take attendance, please.
Yes, John Wycart,
Here.
Doug Bruce,
Here.
Eric Spoonmore,
Here.
Joyce Poling,
Here.
Adam Teese,
Here.
Jim Silverstein is not present, and Jay Bear.
Here. Our friend Jim Silverstein is in Switzerland. And he said he might try to zoom in today, and I suggested if he tried to do that, that would be rather foolish on his part. Whether we see him or not, I don't know, but we don't see him yet. Let me recognize that in our audience today is Sydney Zulik, a member of the City Council, Isabel Piedmont Smith, President of the City Council. Thank you for being in attendance. I don't think I've missed any other elected officials. So thank you for being here. The next item is approval of the consent agenda, which includes the minutes of the July board meeting and the claims. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda? Is
So moved.
there a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor of the motion to approve the consent agenda signify by, oh, I'm sorry, Jim, go ahead and take attendance.
John Wycart,
Yes.
Doug Bruce.
Yes.
Eric Spoonmore,
Yes.
Joyce Poling,
Yes.
Adam Teese,
Yes.
Jay Bear.
Yes. Item number 3, the treasurer's report, and let me turn to Mr. Spoonmore.
Yeah, just a quick update on the revised 2024 budget. I'm pleased to report that we had a very successful meeting with the city council to get the final approval and appropriation of the revised budget. I thought I had all of those numbers here with me, but they were on, and I brought the 2025 budget numbers instead, but we've reviewed those multiple times. And this will get us through the end of the year. So the next step in the process, and I do want to thank President Whitehart and Mr. Underwood for being there at that meeting. They gave a wonderful presentation, very thorough. And we had relatively a few questions asked. It was a very smooth process. So thanks goes to Mr. Whitehart for his presentation to the city council. But we are in good shape for the rest of the year. And I think the process is working very well with the controller's office. And kind of the next step in terms of our funding needs is going to be the 2025 CIB budget that we'll be presenting to the city council here a little bit later this fall. And Mr. Underwood's he's on his way. Yeah, I understand he's running just a few minutes behind, but he'll give us an update on that process, what the schedule looks like, and kind of go through some of the budget figures for us. Any questions on the 2024 revised budget. And thank you all for your unanimous approval of that as well, too, and making that such a smooth process for us.
Okay, any questions for Mr. Spoonmore? Hearing none, item number 4, overall CIB progress to date, and I see my name beside it. One of the things that we've discovered, or I have discovered, I should have known better, is that as we've gone through our meetings in July over a couple of days and met with some groups, and we're describing some things to them. And please recall that in July, we approved a schedule to meet with groups over a 2-day period, July 24th and 25th. And we identified those groups as collaborators. You're going to hear more about that. They were almost focus groups where we were asking various representatives of various groups, and I'm going to tell you who they are, although that'll be repeated to you, I'm sure, in a moment. I mentioned the city council when I reported them last week, that actually they were the first group to provide input into the process, because they wrote us a letter in June and made 21 recommendations about what they would like to see in design. So the meetings on July 24th and 25th with the design team were with collaborator groups as well as city departments to gather more input and more reaction from them, so that could be brought back to us. We were not one of those groups, because that work was being done by our design team so that we could hear what came out of those meetings. And they included the city planning department. Actually, that was the second meeting with the city planning department to talk about the UDO, city utilities, utility providers, the convention center and Visit Bloomington staff, Convention Visitors Commission, Downtown Bloomington Inc., and our beat advisory group. What I discovered, and I attended to basically do an introduction to each group, not to be a participant, I wasn't there for all of them, but simply to observe any of them that I was there for. What surprised me a bit, and it shouldn't have, was that in particular, when we met with one of the groups, they were the BDC group meeting that we had, they were unaware that we had a website. And so what dawned on me was a lesson that I preach all the time, but I've forgotten about. And that is, there's a principle in political advertising that you have to over communicate a message a dozen times before anybody ever hears it. And so we need to over communicate constantly what we're doing, because we are still trying to catch the public up on how far we've come. And then what we need to do moving into the future. The way we need to do that is, first, we need to be more proactive in how we promote our website. Secondly, we're beginning to be invited to attend certain meetings or have other opportunities to talk about what we're doing. I know Mr. Bruce is going to begin making periodic reports to the city council. I've been contacted, asked to do an interview with Bloom Magazine about what we're doing and our progress. Some of us are going to make a presentation to the BEDC at their monthly meeting a week from today. And that meeting will have 50 to 55 C-suite participants, if you will, so that we can describe what we've been doing and where we're headed. Councilmember Zulik has invited me to be part of her Zoom constituent meeting in September. And you'll hear more about this, but we're going to have a community meeting September 16th to describe to the community how far we have come and what we're looking at, and ask them to react to those plans. So we simply need to begin to over communicate what it is we're doing. And I talk about that all the time, and then I forget, because it's inside baseball for us and it's not inside baseball for everybody else. I didn't mention this to the city council, but as I think about the input we've received from groups and where we are in the design process, and we're still very much in the initial design process, what you're going to hear today is very much the initial design process, for which we're only asking you to have reaction to. But by my count, when I reviewed the letter from the city council from June, where they made 21 different recommendations, we have already begun to address 15 of those 21 recommendations. And several others of those recommendations, I think will come more into play to be able to address them when we get into the schematic design phase. So we just need to keep talking about what we're doing. So I encourage all of you to talk about that. We discovered from our lead group, Galen Cassidy, who's the co-owner and manager of the Uptown, said he hears almost every day that people are asking him, is there anything going on with the convention center? So we just need to keep talking about it. So let me end with that. And our website is monroecib.com. Let's talk about that more and more and more. And with that, let's move on to item number 5, the master schedule update from JS Health.
So there's a question at the last, we always want to talk about where we are schedule wise, but there was a question at the last meeting about, in particular, things that relate to permitting and submissions for plan commission and things like that. So we want to directly address that, but also give the overall. So with that, I'm going to turn to Mary and have her do a quick update on this.
Yeah, so as we look across the entire process and look at pacing the project for success, you can see across the schedule where those red squares are across the top are structured CIB meetings. So we are also working with that to report back to you. Currently, some of the main things Schmidt will present in more detail where they're at with the process, but we're also checking utilities. Their sub-consultant, Bill Rieger, has been working with the local utilities. We're in process of getting them to identify relocation costs. We're also looking at the planning schedule, and at the end of the year is when we will be submitting in December for planning. Even though we're keeping dialogue up with planning was part of the collaborator meetings that we had last week. And but because they don't quite have their schedule set for January yet, we are anticipating presenting in January to the Plan Commission, but submittal dates and actual dates will be coming as they solidify their schedule. The other thing about the schedule is that it's just been aligned with working with Weddle and looking at dates that are even more than a year in advance of now, and making sure that Schmidt and Weddle are both in alignment with those schedules. So everyone's been marching forward very, very swiftly.
So I know it's a little tough to read on the screen. I've tried to make it a little bit bigger for the presentation today. If you go to the website, once we get the documents up today or tomorrow, Jay's really good about getting them up quickly. You can see the detail. It's very clear on the screen, but it's not very clear in the room. So I apologize for that. The other piece that I just want to mention is really between now and next summer, almost a year, I guess, there are going to be, this is considered the design process, and there are several, 3 parts to the design process. And then the construction bidding starts to happen in March. We know that there are certain things that are going to come before the CIB each month. And so what we are going to do for one of our next meetings is we're going to try to lay out for you the framework of what is coming to you in September, what is coming to you in October, what is coming to you. Certainly you can see a framework of things that are coming your way, as opposed to just them showing up on your doorstep. So just know we are in the process of putting that together, and it is coming. And you'll either see that in September or October, depending on how we put the finishing touches on that. And we have framework, we have to tweak things as we go, but in general, it'll give you a good frame between now and next summer as construction begins. What are the decisions that are coming to this body? That,
Oh, any questions? I want to take a moment and recognize that I thought I saw Peter Iverson's name. And Peter Iverson is a member of our county council. I want to welcome him to the meeting as well. Thank you for attending. So, no questions?
The only other one thing I think that we could add to that is that while we're in the middle of this schematic design process, one thing that you can count on is that we will be bringing that back to you on our October 9th meeting for review and approval. So you'll see some information ahead of that as we go through this process, but that is one of our determination dates.
Quick question, if I may.
Yes,
Is this master schedule updated in Excel or is it in a collaborative file format?
It is not in a collaborative file format right now. It can be. We're happy to transition it to that. But right now we do have it in Excel as we've been building it.
Okay. Yeah, I think if we had it in a format, it could always be the same. We don't have to keep adding it to the website. It can just be
Yeah.
whatever it is that's always accurate. It's always up to date. But I don't want to, I know got a lot of people looking at it and beyond the stuff, so think about it.
any other comments? All right, item number 6, design phase update. It says, Schmidt, so Sarah, and I know, and David
Yeah.
Dreisel is here as well.
Congratulations.
So I'll get us started, and really we're gonna do our design update right now in 2 different sections. So section number 1 is gonna be a reminder of what we've been doing and where we've been, our big goals. Then section number 2, we're gonna flip over to the conceptual building plan and conceptual elevations, and for that, we're gonna attempt to use technology to work for us and have David, our design partner, who's online, present that part of the program, and if for some reason that fails, then I will Vanna White it and present that part of the program to you. And it will all be fine. So let's start out with recap of project goals. These have not changed from the beginning of the project. And this is a reminder, what are we here to do? Fundamentally, we're here to expand space, to give us more space for conventions and conferences. We're here to create inspiring architecture. We're here to showcase the uniqueness and amenities that are here in Bloomington, what is authentic. We're here to enhance connectivity and everything that that means in every way that we mean it. And then to achieve ultimate sustainability. The words we keep hearing are always like this place to be a model of how sustainability could really be manifest in a convention center. Big goals have stayed the same since 2019 when we started outlining what this project maybe could be. So Deb talked about the schedule writ large. I'm just gonna blow up the section that we're in. We are in project definition. Project definition is another way of saying schematic design. It's one of 3 big design phases as every project moves itself through design into bidding and into construction. We are about 2/3 of the way through. Just about here-ish. Which means that we are starting to get all the pieces of the program in place. We are starting to understand the relationships of all the critical spaces to each other. We're starting to meet with people and really talk about what they need out of this space and place and how to get all of that 10-pound of apples into a 5-pound bag as best we can to define the project. By the time we're all the way here to the first week of October, what we should have done, if we've done our job well, is to have defined the parameters of the project so that we all understand what it is. And then we'll get into more and more detail as we move through the project. I'm going to jump into to a great 2 days of workshop right here, these collaborator meetings, the 24th and the 25th. So we're pretty fundamental in moving this project forward. But before I do that, I do want to point out what John mentioned. On September 16th, we are going to have a public sharing meeting of where we are in the process. Again, we're still first phase of design, so there's more decisions to be made, but it's a great time to celebrate the fact that we're moving, to share where we are, and to have a nice discussion. Thanks, Eddie. So 2 days of workshops are collaborator meetings. I'm not going to review everybody we met with, but we had 2 very full days going on tour around the city of Bloomington and bringing people here to talk about this space and place. Everybody from the Bloomington Chamber Advisory Group to the BEAD group met with a lot of the city and the city officials to understand those regulations and what that schedule needs to be. Met with staff extensively. They also hosted us extensively, so thank you, staff. For being very patient with having us all here. Lots of great discussions over those 2 days. There were definitely key themes that came out of all of those conversations. Pretty much across the board, people bought into the 5 key goals of this project. What are we here to do? We heard no pushback from anyone on those big goals. Those made sense to people. We did hear a lot of things in terms of flexibility. Everybody has something different in mind when they say what they want flexibility for, but the key theme of flexibility really did weave its way through all of that 2 days of discussions, excitement about being able to host two things simultaneously, something here in this building, something across the street in your new addition, but also being able to use the building as one comprehensive facility, which goes to the necessity of the connector. We heard that across the board too. In order for that to really work, we need physical connection between those two spaces and places. Heard a lot of concern about site circulation, not worry so much, but just concern that we enhance the Bloomington walkability and keep people safe and have space to bring in things like deliveries in a way that makes sense for convention center staff. We heard a lot of love for this building and a lot of suggestions on how we could make it better. And so that's going to be part of next week's assignment for our team, is a deep dive into this building to see what makes sense to stay and what maybe needs to be changed out. And some, some functionality things too, some utility meetings about what needs to be changed, some outdoor spaces and requests for amenities. Pretty much across the board, people were excited to be there. They were willing participants. It was really delightful to spend 2 days talking to people in Bloomington about this project. Maybe not everybody knows about it, but everybody who came to this meeting did, and they are excited and happy. So this is kind of what that looked like, just a little snapshot of days and days of meetings. And one of the exercises that we did with some of the groups was to talk about aesthetics. And when I turn over to David here in a minute, he's going to get a little bit deeper into that. But one of the exercises that we performed is what makes sense in downtown Bloomington, what feels authentic and real to be located downtown, and some great discussions about that as well. From those aesthetic conversations, real live time, we developed 5 different directions our big box of a building across the street could go. And lots of conversation about how we break down that exhibit hall into something that is pedestrian scale, something that has materials that are interesting, that are in alignment. From those 5, we're narrowed down today to 3 that we're going to talk about in a little bit more detail. I think you could go to the next one. And we spent some time refining the building program, and I apologize, this is clear on our screens, but it's not very clear on this projector. I'll break it down. 60-40. We are still looking at about 60,000 square feet of space across the street. Renovating this space, it is about 40,000 square feet here. Mr. Tees would point out we don't need to maybe renovate all of it, and I agree with that, but that's what the program has. In this space, there is about 40,000 square feet for a total facility of about 100,000 square feet. Some things in this program that are very, very important. One is the largest space, which is the exhibit hall that is across the street, and building flexibility into that space. We got lots of questions about what is that space big enough to do? And it's big enough to do a lot of different things. It's big enough to have 171 10 by 10 exhibitor booths, if that's what you want to do. It's big enough to have 8 volleyball courts, 4 basketball courts. It's big enough to have a seated meal for 2,000 people, which is pretty great. In addition to this building still having the capacity to have a seated meal for, well, I'm going to get your number wrong, 500, 450. How close a family are we? 400-ish. So that's pretty great, so that you could have both of those activities happening at the same time. Also heard a lot of concern about breakout rooms, and right now we are programmed for up to 14 different breakout spaces, which is going to vastly enhance the kind of conferences and conventions that you do. So, all right, David, we're going to try this. You ready to walk through the program?
I am. So good afternoon, everybody. I'm David Greisel with Convergence Design. We're helping Schmidt with the architecture on this, and this is our early schematic drawing of the complex. And just to get you oriented, north is up. The Courtyard Hotel is that orangish block in the middle, and the current building that we're in is in the upper left, and the new building is on the right, across College Avenue from where we are right now. So a couple of things I want to point out to you about where we are in the planning process. We early on have wrestled a lot with how to do loading, and interestingly, the existence of a large sewer pipe on our site led us to the current plan, which keeps the very, very south end of that L-shaped parcel basically free of buildings, but allows us to drive trucks around on it. And the reason we're doing that is to avoid a great big sewer pipe that runs east and west across there, and not to build over that, but it also allows us to come up with a loading scheme that actually I think kind of works for the big trucks that typically serve these kinds of buildings. Also provides a drive-on ramp so that we can drive vehicles directly into the ballroom exhibit space. And Sarah mentioned that flexibility is key. This is going to be a super flexible space that can be used for all kinds of events, from dressy dinners to volleyball games to basketball. You can see there's 4 basketball or 8 volleyball courts will fit in this 30,000 square foot space, as well as 170 exhibit booths or 2,000 people at a banquet. So it'll be able to do lots of different things. And I keep telling the engineers that I want to be able to drive a fire truck into this space, not because it's going to be on fire, but because I want to be able to display a fire truck if I want to. So it's going to be a super flexible space surrounded on 3 sides. As you see, that yellow area is our pre-function area, which is basically where people meet and mingle before an event. And sometimes they're the unticketed part of a ticketed event. But in any case, there'll be a public circulation with a lot of glass looking out to the city. And that's part of our connectivity idea, is that that pre-function area will be mostly glass, connecting you to the buildings across the street and to downtown Bloomington and the things there are to do here. And then those blue boxes around the exhibit hall are mostly restrooms. And then over in the on the Monroe Center side, we're going to try to renovate and do some necessary things there to get that building up to speed and fully functional. But no real major changes on the first level of that building. There'll probably be more changes on the second level, so maybe go to that plan. On the second level of the Monroe Center, you can see how the link comes across College Avenue and connects into a new pre-function area that will actually encompass part of what is now the Great Hall. And we're going to figure out a way to do that while preserving the nice open truss work in the Great Hall and not mess that up. But it will give us a more functional second level to that building with actual adequate pre-function space, and circulation, I think, will work a whole lot better. It will also allow us to use the elevator and escalator that are already there to access the link on the west side. And so we'll need to add a stair and an elevator on the east side to get people down into our building. There's an alternative second floor plan that adds a few breakout rooms on the second level. That's something we'd like to see, just in order to facilitate it working as potentially multiple simultaneous events. It would be great to have a few breakout rooms on the east side of the site, as well as all the ones on the west side. But I think if you count all the divisions up, I think there's as many as 20 breakout rooms altogether in the total plan. And if we could go back to the first floor plan for just a sec, one thing I wanted to mention is we're interested in developing the site in such a way that it will create a better connection to the B line, but that's kind of on our to-do list. In terms of the planning, we still have to do some work on the site to come up with some ideas about how better to connect our site to the B line. And so I think that's something that we're going to be continuing to look at as we press further into the design. So thank you for that brief digression. So let's jump ahead. So we've seen the plans, and so now we're going to talk about the 3 concepts that have come out of this collaborative process. Great group of meetings with collaborative partners, and we shared a lot of potential inspiration images with them, and from those kind of distilled that down to some things that people really seem to like. And from that, we developed 5 ideas that were fairly quickly narrowed down to 3 ideas, one of which is called City. And the idea in City is to respond very directly to the character of downtown Bloomington. It's a primarily brick and masonry building with, fairly rectilinear geometry, but a large overhanging cornice that not only defines the building, but also provides shelter and a sense of enclosure for folks approaching the building. So I think it makes a dramatic gesture on the street. Our two main entrances would be at the corner of College and Third and the corner of Walnut and Third. Those would be the primary public entrances to the building. You can see in that lower right image where that corner is kind of chamfered to address the corner more effectively and create a little bit more breathing room on what is actually a pretty tight site. So this is city, and I think we have a little video, hopefully. Yeah, seems to be playing. So this, again, we're at a very preliminary stage in design, so these models are a little bit rugged, but I think they at least give you an idea of what this building would look like. This is sliding along 3rd Street, now looking back towards the transit center. This is College and 3rd. There's the connecting link. We just went under that, and then we'll go to the south end of the building, and then that video is going to loop. So let's move along. So that's one of our 3 schemes. The second of our 3 schemes is called Quarry, and as you can imagine, it's derived from Indiana's heritage as a limestone capital of really the United States, and the rich heritage that comes from that. The many buildings in downtown Bloomington that are covered in limestone of one kind or another, and really there's a master class on stonemasonry technique just walking around downtown Bloomington. So this would be another take on that, one that's maybe a little more rugged and a little less polished, but I think still interesting. And so the idea here is the facade really reflects limestone and the nature of Bloomington's industrial past. The projecting canopies are intended to be reflective of the gantry cranes that help to move the stone out of the quarries. So, a lot of historical allusion there. And then if we go to the animation, we can sort of see how that would look. The idea is that these stone panels would tilt out ever so slightly to suggest that kind of stair-stepping pattern that you typically see in quarries. And with large expanses of glass to keep people connected to the city, there you can see that corner entry with the gantry crane structure. And then coming around to the south side. So that's the second idea, the one that we call Quarry. And then the third idea is one that we didn't come up with a really good name for, so we just call it Go Big. This is one that really is intended to be a bold, dramatic gesture in downtown Bloomington, still with masonry and, in this case, steel accents. The orangish canopy that you see would be Corten steel intended to complement the brick piers that kind of hold it up. But in this case, the canopy cantilevers dramatically over the street, reaching out to the corners at 3rd and Walnut and 3rd and College, creating a dramatic overhang that we think will be illuminated at night, so that that soffit that's kind of grayish in these images would be illuminated at night with LEDs that could be color tuned, possibly even a LED message grid, although that's something that would have to be looked into. And then the curtain wall pattern is reflective of the pattern of openings on the Monroe Center. So we're reflecting the architecture of the Monroe Center in the curtain wall of the new building. Here's 3rd and College. Here we are passing under the link, and then this is the south end of the building. So that's a quick look at the 3 concepts. And I know I went fast through that. So what I'd like to do is take a moment to catch my breath and ask the members of the CIB if they have any comments or questions regarding these 3 ideas. The purpose here is to just get input from CIB members and see what you all are thinking about these 3 ideas. And Sarah, maybe you can help facilitate this discussion.
Yeah, happy to do that. Yeah, our intention today is not to pick one. The answer is not up on this board, but we would love to hear from members of this group what resonates, what doesn't, what do you like, what questions do you have, and maybe what don't you like? So our team can go back and start refining.
I like the materials of the city design.
Mhm.
I wish it were a little more dramatic somewhere, but I like the fact that it blends with the convention center and the garage. And doesn't, doesn't. That.
The brick and the limestone, that,
Right, correct.
thank you.
Clarification on that, if I may, we don't anticipate any material changes to the exterior cladding of this building.
We do not.
Okay.
Well, that's a really good question. I think one thing we do anticipate is maybe if we can afford it, and I'm hoping that we can, replacing the replacement windows on the Monroe Center to be something more like the original early 20th century industrial design, to get those openings a little larger and more like it was originally, which is kind of what's shown in these model views here.
But the brick, the limestone, the
Yeah.
skin is going.
Yes.
I'll, I'll add just a little bit. I agree, that I think the first one certainly has some materials with the brick and the limestone and maybe even the fenestration on the facade that probably best complements our downtown. I think maybe some detailing around the entries. I like that we have an entry at a corner near closest to the bus station on all of these options for our transportation, and again, trying to be as green as we can. And obviously, we need an entry near the existing building. We also probably need to look at, any connection or how people that might park in the parking garage directly north are going to enter the building. Are they gonna walk down to a corner and come over? Are they gonna cross mid-block down, the alley across Third Street? I also think I like the connector. We need the connector. That's pretty obvious to make this one cohesive center. I like it being as transparent as we can. I think it gives you that visual down the street. You don't think you're driving under, again, our Third Street underpass here. So I think that's key. And I also think that's key to help kind of allow this existing building to retain its historic integrity as well.
Yeah, with respect to the parking garage, I think that Third and Walnut entry will be very important, because I would expect a lot of people will cross at that intersection and want to be able to enter the building at Third and Walnut rather than having to walk all the way down Third Street to come in at College.
So I guess I was least impressed with the quarry option. Personally, I think the cantilever features of the Go Big option are really cool and unique. And I guess I'm wondering, is there a way that we could maybe get some kind of a conceptual look at maybe a combination of Go Big and City?
It is my anticipation that the next round of this
Yeah.
will be something like that.
Yeah, okay,
Right?
okay.
It will be take the best ideas
Yeah.
from there and start.
And I may be totally off base with the quarry option. It just kind of looked like we've got a building, I feel like, that almost looked like that now with our Justice Center. That's not going to be a Justice Center for much longer, but maybe I just wasn't quite seeing it correctly.
One of the ideas we talked about as a part of the design workshop
Yeah.
is that many of these have so much glass in the primary three facades that perhaps if limestone was not on an exterior facade, it could be on the interior facade of the big exhibit hall. And that could be a really
Sure,
cool thing
yeah.
to see through the windows, like a sort of,
Right.
maybe put Easter egg carvings in some of it.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
it could be kind of an interesting limestone incorporation without a new facade.
Yeah.
Maybe. Thank you. It's-
Do you, Sarah and David, feel like we can afford these three options that you're showing to us? These kind of roof line treatments?
David, you want to
Yeah,
take that one?
I think at this point, we're dealing with the same building footprint and the same building volume. And, really all we're talking about is material choices. And, given the fact that, brick and limestone and glass don't all cost the same, but they're also not that radically different, that I wouldn't say that any of these schemes is substantially more or less expensive than the other at this point.
Yeah, I'm always worried about budget because that's my job, to always worry about budget, but we have tried to be very intentional about just taking that treatment where it is most important. And where the building can be quiet, letting it be as simple and quiet.
Think that they all have opportunities. I would be interested when you list the go big opportunity and the cantilevers. To me, it invokes the idea of what I've heard about in the 5 to 6 years of being involved in this, that it's something that's unique. I've heard iconic, which is a terrible word to use with architecture, but it is something that looks different, if you will, whereas the city looks like it's contextual to the city. So I think the CIB has to decide, is it really wanting to be unique or is it really wanting to fit in, right? And there's two different variations on that you've shown. I think the quarry option is interesting. I think the block size is out of scale for the building. It's quite large. And I think a pedestrian would feel quite poor against it. So I'd be concerned as to what the pedestrian experience is around this building. And maybe you would ask that the next time you come back, you give us a bit of a more urban design worldview of it rather than just an architectural worldview of it. What does it mean to walk and look at this building, and why am I looking at it, and where am I looking from, and what do I care about it as a pedestrian or a driver or who's going to actually see it, rather than do you like the architecture? Because most of us aren't going to spend our time this high in the air.
Just to touch on what you said, I mean, every convention center in the world is essentially a marketing assignment. Other than local events, which will continue to use this building and that building, and they will use it due to proximity. Everybody else has to be sold on this building. So I think for me, the answer is, what is a building that triggers the imagination of those who might be convinced to come here and spend money in this community versus another community? And so I think you should try to err on the side of something that's dynamic, something that creates Instagrammable moments, and that doesn't necessarily quote unquote fit in for the sake of fitting in, but actually has a vibe of some nature. I really do like the go big approach. I really like the window mimicry of the two buildings, and just looking at the three schematics. One of the things that many of the groups that we've talked to so far have indicated is giving that sense of inside out and outside in, so that what's going on in there, and you know what's going on in there. If you just look at these side by side now, to me, it appears that there's a lot more street facing glass in the go big example, which to me accomplishes some of its objectives of making it feel like a building that is open to the people around it, as opposed to closed to the people who are running around it.
I would say that when we met with the BEAD advisory group, the go big was definitely the preference of that group. Not because of anything specifically about the design, but because of the nature of what you're describing. It's a little different than everything else that's done on and this here big sides.
I would add, I think that's a great point. And I think Mr. Pease has a good point also, because if you've been to a quarry and stood right next to the wall of limestone where they removed the stone, it is a kind of a terrifying feeling sometimes. My brother's a limestone carver, so I've been to a couple of different mills. The other worry that I have on all three of these, I think it's just something that needs to be addressed, is still the area alongside College that is the divider between College and the loading zone. Because I think we still need some sort of street treatment there, because right now all of these just show kind of a blank brick wall or something. And, with this city, and especially the UDO, is pretty intent on having activity, function space, and, window treatments, recesses. I don't know if we recess and have plantings or something through there. I mean, no one's gonna wanna look and see semis. But if you had some recesses to break that wall up and had something there, or you broke it up with some limestone patterning or something at a smaller scale. But I think that's, to me, that's a really important spot because that's what everybody's gonna see that's driving by.
That's a great note, and in a perfect world, that wall will just feel like a continuation of everything else that's happening in that building. It certainly does not. So yeah, that's a great point.
But that's definitely on our to-do list to figure out how to make that College Street elevation fully active all the way down.
What thoughts, comments, likes or dislikes?
Since it's not shown on any of these, I think the answer is no, but we do not contemplate ever putting in a connector to the parking garage.
We do not contemplate putting a connector to the parking garage as a part of this project. We will think about where the parking garage connector was planned to be. So that if someday in some future group that I'm not a part of decides to do that.
Well, you're quitting already.
That's part of a different discussion for a different group of people, whether or not that happens.
Yeah,
But we will.
that
we will be
That probably
cognizant.
falls into the never say never category.
I just don't want to close off the option someday.
No, we are cognizant of it. It is not worked in this plan yet.
David, could you share with us, your thoughts on, as the connector was added as part of this project, will you share your thoughts, your rationale on the need for that, and why it's in the design?
Well, it's absolutely essential from a convention center design point of view that these two buildings function as a single building, which means that there is an enclosed climate controlled connection between them. To operate them as two separate buildings that you have to cross a street at grade to get from one to the other, essentially means you have two little convention centers instead of one big one. And I remember Sarah talked about the 100,000 square feet. We'd really like to be able to market this as a 100,000 square foot convention center, not as a 60 and a 40 building. So from a convention center design standpoint, it's essential. I think also just from a guest comfort and safety standpoint, it's essential not to have to cross College, which is frankly a very busy street in Bloomington, to get from one thing to another. So there's that. And functionally, it just makes both buildings work a whole lot better if there's an enclosed connection between the two of them.
Well, and I know in some of the discussions, moving equipment or food or whatever between the two buildings, it was another rationale for why the connector was so important.
Well, yeah, we will be able to move things from one side to the other without going outside, which operationally is extremely helpful. I should also point out, though, that we intend to have two kitchens in this facility, one on the new side, the east side, that will serve the needs of the large ballroom exhibit space, and the existing kitchen, which is at the far end of the current building, will continue to be in use, at least as far as we know, in order to provide high quality food service for folks that are in that building, because we frankly, they have these large hot carts that they call Queen Mary's for some reason. We don't want to be pushing those across the street, even in an enclosed connection, if we can avoid it.
So really the most important element is those corners. Because that's what most people will see the most, the two entries.
I think there's no real back of a space, but those three front facing sides and those two corners are the most important.
Right.
Yes.
And we would hope that the design elements within those would be dramatic too.
Of course. Yes.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
the monumental staircase that takes you up to the second level on the crossover will be right off of that. You can almost see it in some of the rendering. Will be within that space, and that's really important. But all of these have that inside-outside relationship, that we hope it's a lighthouse, it's a beacon, that there's interesting things happening inside, interesting architecture and interesting activities too.
And that's a great place for the limestone.
That inside wall could be part of that interest, and I think could be really beautiful. Yes.
What more do you need? What more do you need from us? I mean, we've commented.
Yeah, this input is exactly what we were looking for, John. So this has been a very helpful discussion. And I think, it gives us an opportunity to go back to the drawing board and see if we can refine these concepts and come up with something that represents a consensus.
Just what we need.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Any other final comments from anyone? Observations? All right, thank you. Construction, update, Deb, JSL?
So there was a question at our last meeting around, guaranteed maximum price and, let me get the document here. And whether, the approach that is, has been proposed in the contract and will also be presented again in the Weddle contract later today, whether this is the right approach for this particular project. So, we did some research, I also looked at, our portfolio as an owner's rep, our portfolio of construction manager as constructor projects. And, personally, I'm managing about $400 million worth of work over the last couple of years, and 90% of that is CMC. The approach that I'm recommending today, which is to go with 3 specific bid packages, for the months of May, June, and August, which means there would be 3 votes by this board to support different packages. So the first one is utilities, site work, and other big equipment, air handling units, electrical switchgear, elevators, things that take a long time, these for long procurement. The second package would be for anything that relates to the structure of the building. And again, it's to allow the project to get things on order. It's also allowing to do some early site work and early structure. And then the balance of the work would be in the final GMP. This is my recommendation. This is also when we look back at the request for proposal process that was held, where Weddle was considered with several others. This is the proposal that their 1.9% fee is based on, is doing 3 independent bid packages with relatively close to these work types. So it is consistent with how they also proposed on this project. And so for me, this is a revalidation. I think we're going the right direction for this. I have found that in my work with public clients who, I'm going to go ahead and say, tend to be less, maybe a little bit more risk averse, or want to be a little more conservative in their approach, that this brings more certainty. We know, and Weddle's in the room, and they know this very well, that we will be held to a $52 million construction number. That is the hard construction cost on this project. These are the things that are built into the structure, things are attached to the walls. And so that is still a requirement. And so that their skin in the game comes in their low fee, and ensuring that this is delivered in their community, for the amount that has been identified. So, again, just asked us to maybe research a little bit more and bring that forward as, another validation. Happy to answer questions.
Okay. Why don't we do this? We have a recommendation. Let's see if there's a motion to accept, a motion to second to accept the recommendation, and then we can have discussion about this. So is there a motion to accept the recommendation? Okay, so Joyce has moved and Mr. Spoonmore is seconded. So now we can have discussions on the motion to accept this particular recommendation. So, members, questions, discussion, observations?
Yeah, no, usually.
Mr. Tees.
I'm the one who brought this up at the last meeting, and I've talked with Deb about this, and I see where this will give some certainty. I just want to be clear that we're accepting bids after the bids have been received for the contractor. So the maximum price has already been bidded for. So there's no risk on the contractor with this approach. It is a bidding, then setting price approach. So I just want to be clear on that. There's not the same value you will get in an open bidding market, an open general contracting bidding market. So as long as everyone's making that trade-off, that in exchange for that, we're getting more certainty as the design develops and more certainty as the project gets designed, you're good with that. It just eyes wide open moment for everyone. So I'm supportive of this, but I just want to make sure that everyone knows that you're making a trade-off with this kind of approach. There's an absolute trade-off. So that was the nature of my question before. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions or observations? Oh,
Sorry, can I make one more follow-on?
sure.
I heard the number 52 million for construction. I've been at every meeting of this board. I've never heard a construction budget stated before. That's the first time I've ever heard that there is a construction budget that's been set for this project.
Yeah, we probably have to go back several meetings, but it was provided in the Schmidt Associates and those numbers. That's where it comes
I mean, do we have 52 million construction? I've never heard of a bonding analysis or I've never heard that we have that money.
Working on the cash flow, we just got to pull the numbers together and hope to present that at the next meeting. Based on just a quick analysis, it's going to be fairly close for an overall budget.
Meaning overall budget is 52 million or construction budget is 52 million?
The overall budget will be $1 million. That would include all of the costs.
Look forward to hearing that presentation.
Mr. Bruce.
Yeah, I would just add, I see what Adam is saying here. I think I like the certainty that we would have for sure. But I give a lot of weight to JSL as our owner's rep that we've hired to kind of follow your recommendation and your experience. This is certainly outside of the scale and scope of any kind of project I've ever done. And so to me, the certainty when we start talking this kind of dollar amount, and I too, like Adam, I remember the slides you're talking about where we had the budget analysis kind of put together by Sarah at Schmidt. But I think the next step was the bonding capacity and where we were. But we're moving along this line right now. We're still in design development or schematic design. And so I hope those things will merge soon and then we know the number we're designing towards.
Mr. Spoon.
So, if the bonding capacity, once that officially is known, and we get that number back, and for whatever reason, we're a little surprised. And, maybe the markets have kind of moved around in a weird way, and we don't have sufficient bonding capacity to meet this budget. Do we have flexibility to kind of scale back a little bit at that point?
Yeah, we must.
Yeah.
It's
But
just.
that's not, this 52 million isn't like signed in blood.
No. And if the bonding capacity comes back, and just to use another number, it's 50 million, then we're gonna have to scale $2 million out of the project.
Right.
Because
Okay.
we're not going back, we're not asking anybody for more money.
Right.
So, whatever that number comes out of that bonding capacity is our construction budget.
And I would add that that's one of the components of the funding. There's cash on hand as well as revenues that will come in over the project. So those are the things that we're looking at. And that will get updated as we go through this process. So we'll have a preliminary number and it'll get adjusted as we sell bond, as revenues continue to come in. So it will be fairly close, but again, it will change over short periods of time as we move into the project. But the idea was so that the folks doing the design work can have an opportunity to tweak that, and as well as the ongoing pieces of the renovations and furnitures and fixtures, piece of it as well.
But I'll repeat, the bottom line is we aren't gonna construct something that we don't have the finances to construct. And we're not gonna go ask for additional finances beyond what these numbers are.
Yes.
Other questions? Okay, so there's a motion and a second to approve the recommendation from JS Health. So Mr. Whitlatch, if you'll take the roll.
Sure. John Wycart,
Yes?
Doug Bruce,
Yes.
Eric Spoonmore,
Yes.
Joyce Pulling,
Yes.
Adam Tees,
Yes.
and Jay Bear.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Item number 8, contracts. Jim, I think you've got several of these, if you want to go ahead and.
Sure. Last month, we approved the contract with the architect, which has now been signed by both parties, so that is in the books and taken care of. The construction manager contract with Weddle, we approved, subject to working out the liquidated damage clause that has been worked out, which is 3.2.12, which has a liquidated damage clause for failure to achieve substantial completion on the new construction. And that's a $1,000 per day capped at 90 days. And that's been agreed to by Weddle. Weddle has now signed the contract, and we'll ask for approval to that provision so that we have approval of that contract, and then we'll be in a position for John to sign it if it's approved after today's meeting or tomorrow or somewhere. It has been signed and tendered by Weddle. And we can talk about that one in a second. The last one I'll do, which is an extension of the contract with the owner's rep with JS Health. And Jeff or Deb can talk about that provision as well. But the two action items are the Weddle Brothers contract approval and the owner's rep contract approval.
Okay, let's take them individually. Is there a motion to approve the construction management budget with the updated liquidated damages clause?
So moved.
Mr. Bruce has moved it. Member Polling has seconded. Is there any discussion? Mr. Whitlatch, will you take the roll, please?
John Wycart,
Yes?
Doug Bruce,
Yes.
Eric Spoonmore,
Yes.
Joyce Pulling,
Yes.
Adam Tees,
Yes.
Jay Bear.
Yes.
The second item for our consideration is the owner's rep contract extension through the end of 2024. I would simply point out that the reason it's coming to us now is that the city council approved our revised 2024 budget that includes this figure in the revised budget. So we had an initial budget with the city council and the FADTech recommended approval of, and that included cost up to date with our JSL. So this is costs moving forward in 2024 that have also been approved by the city council and FADTech recommendations. So I don't know if you have any other comments on that.
I would just say that there's no changes to the basic contract. This is just an adjustment on the not to exceed amount of the contract at the end of this year, and then later this year would be an additional contract at once the 2025 budget is approved.
Okay. Okay, so let's see, is there a motion to approve the extension of the owner's rep contract?
Move approval of the extension of the owner's rep contract through the end of 2024.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Bruce. Any discussion? Yes. Mr.
I just want to say thanks to the city council for their continued partnership on this and getting the funding approved. Thank you.
Indeed. Any other questions, discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Whitlatch, will you call the roll?
Yeah, John Wycart,
Yes.
Doug Bruce.
Yes.
Eric Spoonmore.
Yes.
Joyce Pulling,
Yes.
Adam Tees,
Yes.
and Jay Bear.
Yes.
Okay, item number 9, the hotel, the request for proposals for the hotel. Mr. Whitlatch?
Yes, we had a request for proposal hotel. We had a deadline of last Friday, August 9th at 4 p.m. for submissions in response to that RFP. We received 3. We are in the process of going through those. We really haven't done much on going through those, but we're starting to make contact, but we have received three. Our original schedule was to evaluate that between the 12th and the 23rd with a small group that Deb and I and Mary are working on with some input from CIB board members. With the schedule we originally had was to come back with a short list for approval by the CIB at possibly a special meeting on August 28th. I think we may want to talk about that and see if that's where we're going, with target interview dates of any finalists being September 4th through 6th. So that's the schedule we have now. We have 3 responses, and we're evaluating those at the present time.
Okay,
Any comment from Deb or Mary or?
Mr. Dees?
First, if there,
No, go.
No, go ahead.
what are we offering in this hotel RFP? Like, what are we requesting? What are we offering? I'm still not clear what we're offering a hotel developer.
Yeah, and I think that might be better for Deb and Mary, who really worked on the RFP to kind of address that.
I think what's really this is about is what are the hoteliers asking for in terms of identified gap. So the RFP didn't say, we're going to give you this, or we're going to offer this, because the CFB is in no position to do that. We don't own the land. Ultimately, and it's written on the screen there, a notice of public offering by the landowner will be a step in this process. And so at that point, there could be an offer at that time, maybe, maybe not. But ultimately, that's where that officially comes in the legal process.
Thank you.
I will say, the developers, maybe as expected, are looking at many different properties in the area. So this is not just, them focused on one and put up on the map. This is on the public website. It was attached to the hotelier RP, but we identified all the county properties around the area, as well as any city properties. We did acknowledge the property to the north of 3rd Street there, that it is city owned, but not available to the CIB. But we laid out lots of choices, and they probably have interest in different ones for a variety of reasons.
Okay, so moving forward, what is our, do we have a schedule and a plan to move forward? So the evaluation group is going to meet, and I want to mention that advisors to our evaluation group include Mike McAfee and Mike Campbell. So they helped us in the initial RFP process, and they will continue to be advisors in this process as we move that forward on the hotel. Well, yes, and Jay's one of the members, I'm one of the members, and I'm forgetting, and Doug, oh.
Next to you.
Yeah, of course it's Doug. So anyway, that's the evaluation committee. So,
Yeah, the next step effort of that group is to review what we've received, to meet as a group and to make recommendations to come back to you on the 28th or any other identified date for a special meeting to decide who we will interview, and then to anticipate those interviews from September 4th to 6th.
so currently on the schedule, we have a special meeting set for August 28th, which is 2 weeks from today, to hear a recommendation as to whom to invite to interview from among the 3. So is that,
Let me offer another option, but there are 3, right? So the review team could decide to recommend all of them. They could decide to recommend 2, to talk to 2. When you have 3, I think it's also very viable that you may want to talk to all of them, despite what they, gave you in the proposal, right? Just because you learn things from all of them. So what we proposed here is is a special CIB meeting, I would contend that another option would be to just agree that maybe we should listen to all of them, just, depending on what they have in there. So that's another choice that would eliminate a meeting.
Yeah, that's the reason for my question,
Right.
because we're gonna call a special meeting for August 28th, only to come back and say there were three and we want to interview all three of them. And now we've all come together and had a special meeting and we're gonna invite all three of them to interview. Mr.
If I may, I have read all three, and there's nothing disqualifying in my estimation in any of the responses. There is a somewhat frightening lack of detail in some of their responses, which I think is gonna require some real conversations. Like, there's no way on September 5th, like, great, here's a shovel, like, that ain't gonna happen. So, it's not like we gotta interview 37 respondents. So I think we just save a step in the process and say, let's interview the three and we'll tell you what we think. And if we can, I mean, I know Doug's out of town a little bit and whatever, people have other schedules, but if we can accelerate those meetings sooner than the 4th, 5th, 6th, then I don't know why we wouldn't do that. I mean, I think anybody would agree if we can save a week in this process. At any point, we should try and do that.
I agree.
And if there's information that any of the three did not provide that we're still looking for, we can request that information in advance of our evaluation group meeting. But at this point, we will not need to meet on the 28th. If we agree that all information having been provided we've asked for, we're going to interview all three. Is that the will of the body?
That'd be my motion.
Okay,
And let me add real quick, Jay, so I'll be here for the 4th, 5th, and 6th. It's the 28th that I thought I might have joined by Zoom. But the 4th, 5th, and 6th are any of those cases.
okay, so we still plan to move forward with we can let all three of them know, there's something more we need to know from you.
We can request it.
We can request it. And B, we're setting up interviews, and with three of them, surely we can do this in one day.
Oh, easily, yeah, easily.
So is the 4th, 5th, or 6th preferable
That's a
to
question.
the
And this will
board,
be interviews of the whole.
of the whole board in a public meeting? So a public meeting interview of all three, 4th, 5th, or 6th, if you would look at your calendars, and is there one of those dates you prefer over another?
4th and 5th, the Wednesday or Thursday. Those would probably be best, but all three are open.
There is a home football game on that 6th. Wow.
Friday night, yeah.
That may be out enough just for my traffic
It
stuff.
could be here, it could be here for, you see how busy and how the hotel has, how we have a need. for another.
I'm in this
Well,
hotel.
it might not be a bad day to have an interview.
Yes.
Well, can we do it on the, I've got a conflict on the 6th. Can we do it on the 4th? Is the 4th acceptable to everybody?
Yeah.
I can't look that far off.
Adam can't.
All right, let's, then let's adjust the schedule, to say that we're going to reach out to the three and set up interviews for, Wednesday, September 4th. I don't know that we need a motion for that, do we?
I'm a day.
I think I'd probably make a motion that we're gonna move right to interviews and we're gonna do them on the 4th.
Okay, all right, so is there a motion to move directly to interviewing all three respondents on September 4th?
So made.
Okay, seconded by Joyce. So any discussion about that?
I would just ask, that Deb and team, maybe we work offline and just codify some of the questions that we would like these folks to bring with them, because what I don't want is for a public meeting and a committee of the whole to say, what do you guys want to do? And they're gonna say, we'll tell you once you tell us what you want to do, right? And then we've accomplished literally nothing, right? So I just feel like we gotta tell them how we want them to move the ball, because otherwise they're gonna say, to Adam's point, cool, man, what land should we build on? And we're gonna say, we don't know what land you want to build on, and that's the meeting. So I just feel like we gotta give them a little more nudge.
Absolutely. There's a wide variety.
Yeah.
Level.
Well, we have several weeks to
We do.
get to them and to tell them what we expect from them. And that we expect them to be concise in their presentations about what their expectations are.
I would prefer comprehensive.
Comprehensive?
If given the choice, yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
Depending on the group.
A time. You can say time, 3 o'clock.
I mean, it'd take
1
at
o'clock.
least 3 hours. So
So we need a 3-hour block of time.
It is, yeah.
Do we want to do it in the, before lunch or after lunch?
After lunch would be ideal for me, but I can make whatever work. I can do whatever.
It sounds like after lunch works
After the day.
better for one of us. That's fine with me. So let's schedule it for what, 1, 2, and 3 o'clock?
There's a lot going. So.
Yeah, 1, 2, and 3. Yeah. Okay, so anyway, I put that out as a request for a motion. Are we, is there a motion? Did we already do that?
Yeah.
Okay, all right, okay, so, Mr. Whitlock,
John Wyckoff.
yes.
Doug Bruce.
Yes.
Eric Spoonmore.
Yes.
Joyce Poling.
Yes.
Adam Tees.
Yes.
And Jay Bruce, or Jay Bear.
Not yet. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Item number 10, future required actions, Mr. Whitlock.
Yeah, so the next steps we have in the process that we have, we're working on an agreement with the city, which was part of the interlocal agreement that we had. Cities provided us with an agreement. John and I have worked through it, and we will anticipate getting that back to the city and then probably having that ready for approval at the next meeting. It's pretty straightforward. I don't anticipate any issues with that. The next step in the process will be determining when we will go to the market with the bond sale. City has to create a new building corporation. They're in the process of doing that. And as part of going to the bond market, the property from the county and any other property from the convention center will need to be transferred to the city as part of the bonding process. And I've been having discussions with Jeff Cockrell, the county attorney, and with Margie Rice and her team for the city about how we're going to accomplish that transfer of real estate and get the bond process started. The latest I've heard is that we plan to go to the market either the end of this year or sometime early in 2025. I think that's still under consideration with the finance people that the city has retained and with their legal counsel. One other issue that we do need to do, which should not be a difficult process, but to do the bonding, we need 50 signatures from people who live within the city who want to move forward with the project and the bonding and who support the project. So we may work with this group and the chamber and others to circulate that petition when it needs to be signed. And the important part is we need at least 50 signatures and that they need to be city residents.
Is there any advantage to having more than 50, or is it purely?
Well, when we talked about it, I think there is an advantage, psychological or otherwise, but we also think that probably going for 75 to 100 in case any signature addresses get invalidated. Somebody thinks they live in the city and they don't. And then the signatures are certified and it turns out we've only got 35 because 15 of them really don't live in the city. So yes, we're going to shoot for 75 or 100, and if we get more, great. So we're not sure of the timing of that. It may depend on when they determine the best time to go to market is, but we'll be getting those to circulate here in the near future. And I think that's it on that.
And it's very much the same kind of process that the political candidates use sometimes to get their names on the ballot. We want to make sure that everybody who signs it was an eligible signature on the petition. So hopefully we'll get 1,000 people who will sign the petition. So we'll meet our 50 that way. All right, thank you. Before we go to old business, Mr. Underwood, can you give us information on the 2025 budget schedule?
Yes, I can. We have been scheduled into the city council. We will present same evening as city controller. Just as a reminder, our budget gets baked into the city's budget as a part of the controller's office budget. We will present that on the same night, which is August the 29th. It's a Thursday. As a part of that, I've talked to the council administrator, that we'll also need to have a resolution approved by the city council, so that we can forward that in September to the Food and Beverage Tax Commission, for their approval. And then, the city takes a vote on the budget in late September and early October. So we'll have that in place for the approval. And then it goes to the Department of Local Government Finance, for their approval. And that's typically done before the end of December. So our budget should be in place, by January the 1st. Anyway, for 2025. Yes. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Thank you. Next item, is old business. Is there any old business to be brought before the board? Hearing none, new business to be brought before the board? I guess I can handle this under new business, and perhaps it's a question for JSL. As we look at the hotel selection process, and we've given hoteliers options of various locations, when would we anticipate being able to say, we are selecting this hotelier and we know where they want to go?
Well, we should probably be careful, language will matter here, but because the CIB does not own the land, right, you're not really in a position to select. But, we are almost vetting, shall we say, who those could be, but ultimately the landowner would need to, whoever the landowner is, would need to do a follow the state statute in terms of potential public outlet. So that would be the process. Depends on who owns the land, which land it is, right? There's a lot of what ifs in that, so.
And the reason I ask is we have very interested parties who are leasing or have properties to the south, who are very eager to know, whether a hotel is going there and how far it's going to go and how that affects them. So we need to be very aware of that and sensitive to that, and making certain that we're communicating to them constantly where we are in that process.
I would think about what the CIB is doing is, creating the excitement and the opportunity to bring developers to the table. And also sort of evaluating the, maybe some level of viability, at least at some level. But ultimately, it is the owner of the property that statutorily
Right.
do that, solicitation.
But the owner of the property is certainly going to be aware of where we are in terms of this process.
So, I
Joyce?
have another question. So since the county holding corp will be transferring that to the city will be making that decision.
Well, I think correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the property that's being transferred is the convention property, not the hotel property. Unless I'm wrong.
Right.
So you're saying the land across the street is not being transferred to the city?
No, the land that the new convention center would be constructed on, so I understand it because it's county land right now,
Correct.
would be transferred, right, to the city, because eventually the city has to control
Maybe
it
for the
for the
bond.
bond.
For the bond.
right? But I think the question that John is asking is about the hotel property.
Well, it depends on where it's,
Where
I
is it?
mean, that this
Yeah.
building will be
Yeah.
transferred to the city. Across the street, east of here will be transferred to the city. All that has to be for bonding. And it just depends on what they need. And then,
So that also includes the land south. I mean, that's part of this.
yeah, I don't know what all they'll need for the bonding. It may very well
That
include
they're
that.
going to want all of it. Because it's in one portfolio, more or less.
Yeah.
And I guess those are the details that are gonna have to be worked out.
Yeah.
But again, I just want to be sensitive too and make certain that we are keeping those who have great interest in what direction this hotel is gonna go and whether it affects them. We need to be very aware and sensitive to that. Comments from board members? Mr. Bear.
Just one, really appreciated President Weikert's comments about being proactive about our communication, and nobody thinks about this project more than we do. I think it's easy to forget that we have the advantage of spending time on this every day and most folks don't. And obviously, with some exceptions to the contrary, the media landscape has changed in the last 5 years, and so the populace at large is not as necessarily up to speed as they might have been in previous eras in terms of what's happening with a project like this. As somebody who spent a whole career in marketing and communications, there's kind of two waves, two tactics, right? There's push tactics and pull tactics. The problem with a website, it is the definition of a pull tactic, right? To educate somebody to the website, you got to A, know there's a website, which is a existential question, and B, you got to open a browser, C, know the domain name, type it in, find it, etc. So that's going to happen. People will discover it, but only people who really care. I suggest we should contemplate a little bit more of a push process here, and either put together a short summary video of where the project is and where it will go in the next months, and or sort of an animated short slideshow that can say, okay, here, and build that expressly for distribution in Facebook, Reddit, and places that people actually use to get updated on these kind of projects. I'm happy to do that. It's really easy for me to do that, but
That's the part I was listening for.
I knew you can say that, but it just feels like let's create an asset that the council can share, the mayor's office can share, the chamber can share, and if we do that in a way that is, here's the hors d'oeuvre, and if you want the whole meal, it's monroecib.com. I feel like if we hand out a platter of hors d'oeuvres, there'd be a better chance of people actually taking it.
I really appreciate your willingness to do that and your comment. You know, it occurs to me too, that we have a distribution list about our meetings that I believe has 73 contact names on it now.
Sounds like petition signers to me.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we ought to push out to those 73 people on the distribution list, the website information. We make assumptions that they get to see our minutes, so they're probably reading them, and they probably are aware of the website because they're reading our minutes. And I don't think that's an assumption we can make. So perhaps that's another group we can push this information out and ask them to share it with their audiences as well. So, Mr. Bear, how would you want to proceed with this, with your idea?
We should grab a little subgroup. Feel free to name one, Mr. President. And I think we just need to figure out with probably Deb and Sarah and you, like what do we want to talk about and what is a bridge too far as an appetizer. Once we contemplate that, I can make it in an afternoon. That part's simple. It's just figuring out what do we want to say and what is for the website only. That part's
100%. And right now we have something that we should get out immediately, which is September 16th, right?
Yeah.
The community meeting that's
Yeah.
going to be here. It's going to be in the evening.
Yeah.
So hopefully it's accessible to lots of people.
That's a good reason to do it.
We
That's call to
should
action.
just
Part of
start
that.
getting that out right now. I'm
Yeah.
going to say that many times today, so people get it on their calendars. I think, Cindy, we can send it out to the group that we have, the groups that we met with, should receive it as well. So.
Yeah, and again, asking them to share it. For instance, the Chamber Advocacy Committee was there, but it wasn't the entire Chamber Board of Directors or the Chamber membership. And, pushing that out to almost 900 members is going to be extremely helpful. So, Mr. Bear, I will volunteer either, both of those people you asked to assist you with that. So,
Can do.
if there's anybody else you want, I'll leave it to you to invite anybody else to help you with this.
I think the only issue is just what. I love this idea of using this as essentially the informational lure to get people to the meeting, because then there's more of a time-based rationale to have this piece of communication. So I think that's a really good filter for it. So that helps. Here's what we've done so far. Here's where we're going. Short, talking 20 seconds, right? Attention spans are very tiny now. And by the way, we're gonna have a community meeting and there's a website. Like it's one video, easy.
Yeah, in the community meeting, we need to market it that this is your opportunity, to react to and give us input on what we've been looking at as a board. I hope that's a hook. Thank you. Any other comments from board members? Comments from the public? Anybody in the public want to make a comment? Yes, please, if you don't mind, if you'll tell us who you are, and we have 3 minutes for public comments. Sure.
Thank you for, letting me speak. My name is Sandy Keller. I'm the executive director of Assistance Plus of Monroe County, a nonprofit organization directly south of the convention center. We see approximately 10,000 visitors a year. It's an extremely popular place that moves a lot of people in the community. We have about 10 people a day asking us about the status of the expansion of the convention center and whether or not we are going to be displaced as an organization. They're very concerned about it. If you could make it more public and allow people to have more input, we have a lot of people that are very interested in where the new hotel is going to be, how this is going to affect us, if this is, our space is going to be a parking garage or whatever, but it's hard for us to fundraise for a relocation activity if there is no information that we actually need to move. And that is the messaging that we are getting all the time. People. So it's extremely hard for us to be doing a relocation, you know, a for-profit business and a nonprofit organization associated.
Thank you, I'm very sincere when I said that we need to be very aware of that and sensitive to that and be able to get that information out into you as quickly as we have it. Thank you. Anyone else from the public? Any other comment? Yes, sir.
I really don't have, the only thing I was gonna reiterate was kind of what she said. I wanted to thank you for acknowledging us in this, because we are really small potatoes, and we realize that. Although we are, you know, I've been over there for a total of 15 years. And so if anybody's been in, said you have, in my business, and a lot of you have, it's a big store with a lot of quality merchandise that a lot of the professors of everything, when they downsize, we buy. So my thing with Felicia has been, I've been kind of panicked because I'm like, it would take a while to look at that. And so I want to thank you, John, for acknowledging that, you know, that's a concern of yours that keep us in the loop.
Thank you. And for the record, would you give us your name, please?
Jeff Schofield. I own Jeff's Courthouse. Right now.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your comment. And when you ask about a parking garage, I saw President Piedmont Smith shake her head that you don't have to worry about that.
That's the promise we can make.
And it's not only just us, there are 26 low-income houses. You really don't think of it that way, but there are.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comment? All right, seeing none. The next board meeting then is September 11th, 2024 at 3 p.m.
September 4th.
Oh, September 4th, our interviews for the hoteliers at 1 p.m. here in the convention center, public meeting, full board, the members of the board who can attend will be here in a committee of the whole interview process, and it's a public meeting. So September 4th at 1 p.m. And then the next regular scheduled board meeting is September 11th back here at 3 p.m. And then importantly to acknowledge, I'll keep repeating it, September 16th, 6 p.m. is the public meeting, the community outreach meeting here in the convention center from 6 to 7:30 is what we've been working on planning. So those are our meeting dates. We'll get that out to everybody. All right, with that, unless there's objection, we're adjourned. You don't have to stay here, or you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.